When you control the line of scrimmage, you can control a football game, and Penn State spent the afternoon in Piscataway shoving the Scarlet Knights all around the field.
And this is senior day for the Penn State football team. These seniors have contributed a lot to the program.
But most importantly, it's a battle for the most beautiful trophy in all of sports, the Land Grant Trophy. Blue White Tailgate is next.
The Lombardi Trophy, the Stanley Cup, the Land Grant Trophy.
I think Jay's tongue was bleeding.
I think so too. Yeah. Okay, Todd Sadowski, Jay Paterno. Kenny Schierlinger later in the show will take a look at the most beautiful trophy in sports, the Land Grant Trophy. And also later in the show we'll talk with former Nittany Lion quarterback and current Baltimore Ravens quarterback, Trace McSorley. Look, they've gone out and they've put together back-to-back wins. And Todd, they have found a way with this team to win.
Absolutely. The rushing attack, absolutely relentless. They just kept at it and kept grinding over 240 yards now in 3 of the last 4 games on the ground. It was methodical, but they kept the chains moving. And Steve, we talked about this before the show. Yeah. The conditions did not, I mean, you were there in person. Yeah. They were not favorable, so they did the right thing when in those conditions.
Conditions were brutal. And Jay, that's something that as a coach, you got to figure in sometimes even the morning of the game what you might do because of conditions.
Yeah, years ago when Joel Myers, who founded AccuWeather, was a young meteorologist, he sent Joe a forecast that it was going to be snowing at Maryland, and they changed their entire game plan. They got out there, and it was 65 degrees, and he got it wrong. But you got to adjust on the fly sometimes.
And James Franklin knows that his team played well in this game.
A lot of good things to build on, especially on the defensive side of the ball, especially in the running game. On offense, thought we had a really good plan and a good feel for how we wanted to attack their defense, and then they made some adjustments, and then we adjusted from there as well.
And that's a big part of it, Jay. It's the adjustment part that you have to go through when you're playing a game like that.
Yeah, I think, when Penn State got up 17-0, it looked like they were on their way, and Rutgers really made some great adjustments with what they were doing in their blitz game and kept Penn State out of the end zone the rest of the game. I think what we want to see this week is that Penn State's offense plays a 60-minute game. I think Rutgers would maybe a step or two ahead of them in the second half, but we'll see this week.
So let's get to our pregame update. Kenny Schierlinger now telling us what's going on.
Well, Steve, don't look now, but the Nittany Lions are on a roll. Winners of 2 straight. They are now ready to host the Michigan State Spartans at 3:30 on ESPN as the 2 teams are ready to battle it out for the famous Land Grant Trophy. Let's take a look into Lions in the league. It was a great weekend for former Penn State tight ends as Mike Gesicki hauled in 9 catches for 88 yards and 1 touchdown in Miami's win. And Detroit Lions tight end Jesse James snatched his first touchdown of the season in Detroit's win over Chicago. And history was made for the Penn State football program in their win against Rutgers as they joined the 900 win club in college football, an honor only 9 FBS programs can boast. And Blue White Tailgate fans, make sure you head down to your local Blaze Alexander family dealership to pick up a Blue White Tailgate mini football. Steve, go on.
Right there. All right. See, put right here on the table, all set. Yeah, the 900 wins. That tells you about greatness of a program from day one.
No doubt about it. That's a really cool milestone to hit, and I like that it's coming against a team like Rutgers. You got a long tradition standing with, and just look, 900 victories. Whew, that's an exclusive list.
Yep, making a mark full screen. Here we go. This is what we got. This is what the senior class has done. You're a New Year's Six champion in 2 of them and a Big Ten champ. And a guy like Will Fries came here. And remember, when he signed, along with the other fifth-year seniors, Penn State wasn't bowl eligible when these guys signed.
Really important, especially being, last home game for all the seniors, the guys that have been here for 4 and 5 years. And just looking forward to going into Beaver Stadium one more time. No matter what the atmosphere is, what senior day is, but I'm excited for it, just go out and, play one more time in that stadium.
And Todd, trying to build more momentum here down the stretch.
Formative years, right, for these guys at that age group, and what you want is a lot of great memories and a lot of good things that are happening, and they certainly have laid a foundation for the groups that are coming after them to ascend to great things, and they've done an awesome job here at the school.
Michigan State may tell you their signature wins over Michigan for obvious reasons, but Jay, this team beat Northwestern.
And beat them, got out to a big lead and did some things in Northwestern defense that a lot of people have not done. So, again, it's going to come down to how well Michigan State's offense plays throwing the ball. And if they do that, it could be a long afternoon.
And they've got the receivers, which we'll touch on later, Jay. They have the receivers to do what you talked about.
No question about it. Just a matter of whether they give them the ball or not. And we'll have to see what's the weather like, some other conditions. How does Penn State play those guys?
The Penn State defense was outstanding last week. 45% of the plays that Rutgers ran were either no gain, 1 yard, or a loss. We'll talk about the Penn State defense as we continue with Blue White Tailgate presented by Blaze Alexander after this. Well, as we mentioned going into this segment, 45% of the plays that Rutgers ran last week were either no gain, 1 yard, or a loss. I thought the signature series of the game for Penn State was when Penn State turned the ball over in plus territory, and then Rutgers had to punt from their end of the field. I thought that told me everything.
Well, right, because how many points have the opponents been scoring on turnovers leading up into this game? And a little secret about the show, we usually have the offense as the first block when we talk about stuff, but the defense was so impressive, got moved up a little bit in the program, and they were really good, and it was just one of those things where they finished the game. You know, Jay talked about the offense wanting to play a 60-minute game. I think some of their decisions were based on the fact that the defense was playing so well.
And Jay, what did you see with gap integrity for Penn State? What kind of difference does that make?
Well, Rutgers never looked like they had room to breathe at any time in that game. They never looked comfortable in their offensive system or with what they were running. They made some plays here and there, but they just – and I think that's a testament to Penn State's pressure and their relentlessness. And
the defense is getting better all the time. And Shaka Tony says that's because they've always kept the positive attitude.
When things aren't going right, people want to scratch the whole thing or just, start all over. No. If what you had worked, stick to it. Or find out how to reinvent it. Or maybe you need to find out how to tap deeper into it. And that's what we did. And that's what we've done these last few weeks. And that's what we're going to keep doing.
And Shaka's one of those guys, you know, when he talks, the other players listen.
Yeah, that's the kind of leadership that you need, especially when you hit hard times to start a season. When you lose 5 straight like that, I mean, who are you going to listen to? You got to listen to those senior leaders, and you lead by example, right? More is caught than taught. And when you watch these guys that are around the field and the way they're handling their business, it really speaks to the younger players.
We could pick anybody as our defensive player of the week because of how they play, but we went with Jesse Luketa. It seemed like he was around the ball a lot for Penn State. Rutgers moved the ball a bit when he actually had to come out briefly when he was banged up. But this is the kind of game he played here, Jay. He was just all over the place.
Yeah, it was probably his best game of the year, if you look at it not just statistically, but in terms of his impact on the game at key moments in the game. I thought he really stepped up and played at a level he has not played most of the year.
No question. There's the big fumble recovery right there that set up a field goal for Penn State. And he's all over it. Look, here's the open field. Right there, boom, got him.
Just a couple of weeks ago, we had Matt Millen talking about the linebackers, right, and how they needed to improve. And it's good to see the tackling part of it for Jesse Luketa and the fact that he was moving side to side and around the ball. Good reads.
There's another part to it, too, that we want to give also an addendum to Joey Porter Jr., who was named the Big Ten Freshman of the Week. When you watch him, Jay, it's a long corner, right? 6'2", long. What does that bring to today's game?
Well, when everybody's trying to get bigger wideouts, so you need bigger corners, and he does have those skill sets. I still think that down the road he'll make a great NFL safety because of his toughness and his coverage ability. But right now he's playing pretty well at corner. Now we'll find out how well he plays this week. He's going to have a little bit better group of wideouts, talent-wise, with Michigan State coming in.
No question. And Devon Ellis, to his credit, picked up his first career sack at the end of the game. Now let's get to our Tale of the Tape, brought to you by our great friends at CP Vets. So let's break down the Penn State defense. All those numbers are getting better by the week. Meanwhile, for Michigan State, the problem right there, Jay, is the 95 yards rushing. And Michigan State only has one rushing touchdown on the season, and that was the quarterback, Peyton Thorne, last week.
Very uncharacteristic of Michigan State past. The question is, will they be able to get anything going Saturday? I would not expect them to. I think this was still going to come down to whether or not Michigan State can hit some passes and get going.
And there's certainly some questions at quarterback because of how the Ohio State game played out.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure we're going to see Rocky Lombardi, but when a team comes into it and they look one-dimensional right from the start, I mean, you can go after the quarterback, and now if they don't even have their starting guy, the Spartans look like they're in trouble. I mean, Coach Tucker's got himself some issues to deal with, and of course, came in a little late to get started with everything. But it looks like a full rebuild, and that's why that victory over Northwestern, Steve, kind of jumps out at you as so puzzling.
Yeah, I mean, it was sad. I kept sitting back. I was in the airport after doing the Michigan game, and I kept waiting for Northwestern to come back. It never did.
Yeah.
Talked about this being senior day. One of the four-year seniors is Tariq Castro Fields. James Franklin, especially with the wideouts that Jay's referenced a few times, he'd like to have Tariq Castro Fields back in that lineup.
Conversations that I've had with Terry this week is we think there's a good chance that we're going to have Tariq this game. But, it's similar to what it's been. It'll depend on how the week goes, and then also what our trainers and doctors and Tariq feel late in the week and come game day.
Naylor, we talked about, good wideout. Jaden Reed, the transfer from Western Michigan, stepped in. I mean, in terms of the ability to, with wide receivers, they can get them the ball. They can make plays.
Well, and Penn State's been short in the secondary for a couple of weeks now. I mean, you've got to be able to rotate bodies in there. And anytime you have your best corners, it's going to allow your pass rush an extra half second or a second to get to the quarterback. So you got to have your best corners in there to obviously play your best ball.
And the guy that's been a nickel that had a sack and did some other things last week, Daquan Hardy. Look, it just seems like he's playing better with each passing week, and that helps. And then Keaton Ellis being back helped last week as well. We'll take a look at the Penn State offense. Life in the trenches. They won it big last week as we continue after this. Well, you want to own the line of scrimmage. It goes back to Todd's opening. I mean, they did exactly that. And Penn State on Saturday did that. Another game with right around 250 yards rushing in a game like this.
Yeah, it was really impressive, and it doesn't have to be a secret. I mean, they're coming at you, right? I mean, you just know they're lined up. It's going to be a handoff. It's, in every situation, they're confident in running the football and have been successful the last couple of games.
Our Offensive Player of the Week brought to you by our good friends Dorn and Cornwall, part of the Keller Williams Group. Great to have them on board with us. You want to deal with the best in the business, and we're great to have them on board with us. And that offensive line, look at the holes. Jay, we talk about balance. Balance is the threat of being able to run. When you're running the ball like this, what does it then do for the passing game?
Well, they got to bring people down to the box, which Rutgers did. And, fortunately for Rutgers' defense, with the wind, that kind of took away some of the pass game stuff. But Penn State was still able to run the ball pretty much when they had to.
And that big one was that 31-yard run by Kevon Lee that got them out from the shadow of their own goalpost. Then they got 15 yards tacked on for the horse collar. They got out to midfield on that play.
Absolutely, and I was mentioning it before. I think, look, the offense would like to have done a little bit more, maybe some passes downfield, that type of stuff, but really didn't need to because Rutgers did not threaten them, and the offense was able to play it a little bit more conservative than they probably would have.
What about Will Levis now in this? And Jay, I want to take everybody back to the Alamo Bowl. So this is not a new concept. You did this with Darryl Clark, with Anthony Morelli at quarterback. And I remember after the game, Jack Ham and I talked to you and asked about when were you thinking about throwing the ball because Darryl's a quarterback. And you ran 5 plays with him, and you told us the 6th play was a pass.
Yes, it was.
Right.
We told Darryl that too. But you've got to be able to throw the ball, and Will does present that challenge. If you're getting ready to play Penn State on defense, and you see Levis in there, you can't just assume it's a run because he does have the ability to throw the ball.
Right, that's important. Now let's get to the drive of the game. All right, so our drive of the game brought to you by the Sign Stop. All right, here we go. Penn State takes over. And there's a big run by Kevon Lee right away. Look at that move to the outside. Penn State's breaking more tackles by the week, Todd. There's pass play over the middle, put themselves, that was Isaac Lutz. And here's Devin Ford to the edge. Third rushing touchdown for him this season, 6th of his career.
A couple of nice things we saw just in that drive alone. One is Devin Ford back in the lineup. It's great to see him back and contributing. Kevon Lee with the jump cut. I mean, you know, we see that he can go forward and fall forward and get those tough extra yards. But to show some of that shiftiness at his size, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with for sure.
Yeah, and no question. That gave Penn State breathing room in this game. So, Jay, let's get to Sean Clifford. Conditions like this, sometimes you have to be the, quote, it's not the greatest term in the world, game manager. So what did you think of his game management?
Well, I thought he did what was asked of him. He had the one turnover, which I'm sure he'd like back. But other than that, he really kind of, if you want to use a golf reference for Todd, the golfer, I mean, he kept the ball in the fairway, kept Penn State on track, and they made all their greens in regulation. So I thought he did a nice job with that.
And I know with me, it's not always the fairway I'm supposed to be in.
Not just one golf reference, too. I'm impressed with Jay over there.
Very good. So, Tail of the Tape brought to you by our great friends at CP Vets. Here's the Penn State offense, and how it stacks up against the defense of Michigan State. They're giving up points this year. They've also given up a fair amount of rushing yards as well along the way, which is something, the way Penn State's running the ball comes into play.
We saw the very same thing as we looked at the tail of the tape last week against Rutgers. And you look at the numbers and you look at the matchups and you say, wow, they should be able to run the ball. And they were able to run the ball on the Scarlet Knights. So, you know, we'll see if it translates to another solid day running the ball against the Spartans.
Now, I probably should have referenced, I mean, the Michigan State offensive line they're physical. And that's the way Michigan State always is, as Jay knows better than anybody. Well, their defensive front is also physical, and Will Fry says, hey, look, they're going to have their hands full.
Typical Michigan State fashion. They're, an aggressive, play really hard front seven group. And it's going to be a big challenge for our offensive line this week. We have to be able to get moving off the ball.
And that would be big. I mean, again, controlling the line of scrimmage, Jay, so that then it gives them a wide array of options to go to.
Yeah, and I think you'll probably see Michigan State play more aggressively up front with bringing an extra guy in the box. And they'll put their best corner probably on Dotson and say, let's see if you can throw the ball and the other guys can beat us. Because Dotson really, the other teams have been really concentrating on him since that Ohio State game. And he's really, you've seen his numbers kind of tail off. So I think he's going to be a big factor in this game as to how well he can handle that.
So what would it mean, Jay, to get a threat on the other side of Dotson? I don't mean Washington's slot. Another threat that can be dependable.
Well, it changes your entire coverage. The other thing is you'd like to see him do some things maybe where they move Dotson around to get him loose with motion and things so that he's not always facing that guy and the other team can't say, hey, he's always going to be here. We know how to adjust our entire defense accordingly. But they're going to have to develop that other threat. And with Freiermuth out, that really thins out that receiving core.
But those two tight ends, Strange and Johnson, wasn't just catching, but the way they blocked, Todd.
A valuable experience these guys are getting at the end of the season to get some plays, and they look impressive. I mean, they're jumping right into a situation they didn't expect them to be in, and they're succeeding.
Former Nittany Lion quarterback, current Baltimore Ravens quarterback, Trace McSorley joins us in the next break. We'll talk about his pro career and about the Penn State quarterbacks after this.
Throw it on a dime like you ain't even trying. Just a kid from Briarwoods, I'm wearing number 9. Met Coach Franklin down at Vandy. Flipped a happy Vandy.
Welcome back to Blue White Tailgate, presented by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships. Kenny Schierlinger joining me here on set. And time now to talk to one of Penn State's all-time greats, the quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, Trace McSorley. Trace, great to have you with us. Welcome.
Hey, Steve. Appreciate you guys having me on.
It's great to have you on. You threw the touchdown pass against Pittsburgh, obviously. It's garnered a lot of attention. What was the moment like, but also what's been the, quote, learning curve on this level for you?
Yeah, that was a great moment. Obviously, just, to be able to get in there and, try and make something happen for the team. Kind of trying to be a spark plug going into that game late in the fourth quarter, down a little bit. Obviously, Marquise made a great play, being able to make a couple guys miss and, turn it into a big play for us. But, the learning curve, it's been a little bit of a gradual one. Obviously, being able to get in and get real game experience helps. It's different from practice to the game. So, it's been a little bit of a learning curve, but I think our quarterback coach, Coach Urban, he works with me a lot after practice, going through a lot of film, working on the field after practice, and kind of always making sure that even though for the last year and a half, really, I wasn't preparing as a starter, I was the third string guy, and for a lot of times inactive on game days. We were preparing like I was going to be the starter, especially with this year. You never know what's going to happen with COVID guys being out and stuff like that. So, I think just working to that standard has really helped so that when I did, finally get an opportunity, was able to turn it into something.
Trace, what was it like to have that moment in the city of Pittsburgh, in the state of Pennsylvania, in a state that obviously you have a lot of experience and some success in that same stadium in your time at Penn State?
Yeah, kind of like you said, being back in the state of Pennsylvania is, familiar territory for me. For me, obviously, I played that stadium a few times in college, being able to go back there. So it was cool just to be back in the state of Pennsylvania where I played college ball and everything. And really, we were down, so I just kind of wanted to, give our team a chance to win. Obviously, we weren't able to pull out the win. So from that standpoint, it was a little bit frustrating. But just to be able to go in and play in the same state that I played my college ball in was really cool.
Obviously, you know Sean Clifford, you know Will Levis, so I'm going to take you into that room for a moment. You now are on the pro level, pro experience. What would you tell them right now? What would your advice be to them?
Man, I would just tell them that you just got to keep chipping away. Obviously there's been some struggles that they've gone through, and they've started to kind of turn a corner there. It looks like they're playing a little bit better ball, but I just got to tell them just keep chipping away, and control the things you can control. And just go back to when you were playing ball as a little kid, having fun. That kind of, it's a very simple thing, but it fixes a lot of issues. I think just kind of go back and play ball and have fun. There's a reason you fell in love with the game, and just go back to being that. Playing ball like you were when you were a kid or when you're in high school. Just getting back to that, and I think, from watching it, they've kind of continued to do that, and they're out playing ball and just playing hard, and taking care of the football. And I think those are the things that they've done well the last few weeks, and that's kind of just the advice I would give them is you can't, there's some things you can't control, but control things you can't control and just kind of keep chopping wood, keep going at it, and get back to playing ball and having fun.
Trace, yesterday Coach Franklin brought up what he misses most about playing football outside of COVID-19 and outside of the year 2020. And he brought up how he used to celebrate with you on the sidelines, coming off the sidelines, that you would punch him in the chest, he would punch you back, but he said those punches from you in celebration would be a little bit more and hurt him in the chest a little bit. But what do you miss most about Coach Franklin and your time at Penn State?
Yeah, I think just that locker room feel. Kind of that feel that you get going into the locker room, being around guys on the team, how close we were, the chemistry that we had. I think we had a tremendous locker room while I was there. And, like I said, when you go out and you got a tight locker room, you're playing for each other, and you go out and you start having success, then it just gets fun. You start celebrating. Like you said, you throw a touchdown and run back to our sideline. Franklin's running out to try and beat up on me, so then I give it back to him a little bit, give him a few rib shots, and kind of celebrate with him. So I think I definitely just miss those times. And obviously, running out in Beaver Stadium, there's nothing like that feeling, running out into a packed house in Beaver Stadium, which I know all the guys are missing this year, not having those fans in there. So I think, those are things that I just miss, and I think they're missing that a little bit too.
He didn't say it hurt a little. It hurt more than that. You gave a pretty good one right there. Is it in the transition? Bobby Engram's a part of that staff, former Penn Stater who was one of the all-time greats here. What do you pick up from just being around somebody like that? But also, what do you pick up from RG3 and Lamar Jackson along the way in that quarterback room? Yeah, it was really cool to kind of come in and obviously have Bobby Engram on the staff here, kind of have a little bit of a Penn State connection, kind of have that, be able to feel comfortable a little bit around someone who's played at Penn State and, obviously was, as good of a player and kind of as much of a legend as he was at Penn State, what he was able to do there. So that was really cool to kind of come in and be able to have that, Penn State connection with him. But then being able to learn from guys like Lamar and RG3, I think it's been, it's hard to put, price on how much I really appreciate that. How, I've been able to learn from them, how, RG3's been really a mentor for me, kind of learning under him the last few years. All the experience he's had, a guy that's been in the league for as long as he had and kind of seen so many things, being able to learn from him. And then learning from a guy that's as talented and as big of a star as Lamar is, and how just he's continuing to learn himself. He's learning things, being able just to try and absorb as much stuff from him as possible. He's at the top of the league right now, and
being able to learn from a guy like that is invaluable, I think. So it's been a huge pleasure to be able to learn from both those guys.
Well, as you would probably understand, on a seat of royalty of Penn State football, you will forever have one. So thanks so much for the time you gave us today. Appreciate you very much.
Yeah, of course. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Trace, as always, appreciated very, very much. Coming up on Blue White Tailgate, presented by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships, we'll take a look at Michigan State as we continue with more after this. All right, welcome back. Yes, it's the battle for the world-famous land-grant trophy. Kenny Schierlinger in a few moments on that.
Yes.
Only Kenny could do this segment.
I think it would take the whole crew to lift that thing, wouldn't it? All of us.
Oh,
grab
absolutely.
a corner
Absolutely.
and go.
John Strobe, one man.
Yeah.
Everybody else,
Yeah.
four. I mean, so let's get to the matchup with Michigan State. Take a look at it. This has been a really fabulous series over the years, and they've split the last four meetings between the two. And Mel Tucker steps in as the first-year head coach after 1 year of being a head coach. And there he is right there. There's Mel's resume to this point, and he's the guy that has to fill the shoes of Mark D'Antonio.
And notice that first date, Steve, February 12th. That's a tough date to step in.
Yeah.
And, we were talking about, you had an interesting story part of it, near signing days, the D'Antonio resignation was unexpected, but you happen to be right there in East Lansing.
Yeah, Penn State played Michigan State in basketball that night. So, and in fact, it was a big win for Penn State that night. Myron Jones had a huge game. But before the game, they had the press conference, and I'll be honest with you, Mark D'Antonio was ashen standing up there. Like, this whole thing hit him like a ton of bricks, and he did great work there. They got to the college football playoff. They took advantage of when Ohio State and Penn State had a lull at the same time. They took advantage of it, and I give him credit for it. And Mel Tucker, when he looks at Penn State, he does see a lot of things that impresses him.
Penn State's got a team that is better than their record. They've gotten better throughout the season. They've got good players. They're very well coached. James does an awesome job. He's got a really good coaching staff. I have a lot of respect for what he's done throughout his career, what he's done there, and what he's done to build that team.
So Jay, let's get to the offense. Rocky Lombardi has been the starting quarterback most of the year. He got hurt against Ohio State. We don't know if he can go this week or not. Peyton Thorne, the redshirt freshman, stepped in, ran for a touchdown in the game, but they've got wideouts.
Yeah, and it seems like Michigan State always has had them. Going back to Plaxico, going back to a bunch of other guys, Charles Rogers, you name it, Andre Rison. So this is another group of guys that can run, another group of guys that are capable of making plays. And if you miss a tackle, they're gone. And Penn State's going to play very, very sound defense against those wideouts and force, get some pressure on the quarterbacks.
And Rocky Lombardi's had his moments this year, there's no doubt. And there's a reason he's the starter. But Peyton Thorne stepped in last week against Ohio State. I thought he gave a good account of himself.
Yeah, and this is going to be a difficult task for him if he's going to get a lot of playing time. These guys have been prone to some mistakes. They have thrown some interceptions. They have turned the ball over. And for Penn State, this is probably a little bit of a relief. We talked earlier in the year. They hit a stretch of quarterback play at the very beginning in that losing streak where you had Penix and Fields and McCaffrey played well for Nebraska at that point. I don't think he's played that well since, when he played for that particular game. And so, I don't know what you can expect from Michigan State's quarterbacks, but if the previous games are any indication, not as much as they've seen from some of the other teams. So we'll see.
Yeah, we talked about the wideouts, and they're really good. And Naylor's the one that leads it. Reed, the transfer, has stepped in. He's played really well. Good tight end play. Matt Dotson's very good. What's interesting about Michigan State with the big, powerful offensive lines that they've had, Jay, they haven't had a 1,000-yard rusher in 6 years, and they don't have a rushing touchdown from a running back this season.
No, if you look at the last couple of years, they've had a lot of running back by committee. They haven't had that one guy that they've had in the past, even though they've run the ball effectively for a number of years, but they just have not had that one guy.
The Lombardi Trophy, Stanley Cup, Borg Warner Trophy, the Land Grant Trophy. Kenny Schierlinger.
Well, guys, the Land Grant Trophy is a staple in the Michigan State and Penn State rivalry. And while it's not the prettiest thing in the world, Both teams value it and keeping it in their respective locker rooms, as Will Fries talked about this week.
It's a fantastic trophy, and I would love to keep it in our locker room. I would love to get a picture with it with the guys, after the game, and obviously got to go 1-0 first, win the game to retain the trophy. But looking forward to that opportunity.
The land-grant trophy was brought into existence by the late MSU coach George Perlis in 1993. The trophy honors the two pioneer land-grant institutions of the United States. Over the years, the trophy has become a meme online and even has its own Twitter account. Back in 2017, James Franklin referred to the trophy as the most beautiful trophy in college football. But this week, MSU head coach Mel Tucker wasn't ready to share the same sentiment as Franklin.
I would like to have it, but obviously they're not just going to give it to us. So we're going to have to earn it. Ugly trophies, ugly babies, you want to have them.
Ugly trophies and ugly babies. Steve?
Yeah, can I add the ugliest dog contest?
George Perlis has passed. He did not design the trophies. I want to make sure we're clear on that he knows that. And, when I was coaching, the joke was the losing team should take it home because it's rather burdensome to move from one place to another.
Wow.
The ugliest dog contest. That's one of my favorite contests, too. So.
And by the way, in order to do this, the Michigan State defense has some players. Simmons at linebacker is a really good player. Panazuk, the brothers have been great. Now, he's the one that's still there. And Shakur Brown, let's give credit where credit is due. He has 5 interceptions this year.
So does the team.
Right?
Yeah.
So, number 29. Right? I have to identify a guy in every play. I'd find where he is first. He's a good football player. So we want to make sure we got that in there. Land-grant trophy. You know what? I think the 3 of us should pose with that someday.
Yeah, just not lift it.
Film room after this.
Welcome into the film room. Kenny Schierlinger, Jay Paterno, Penn State, Michigan State, the land-grant trophy. Jay, let's get into it. Michigan State's offense, they have the wide receivers, but the question always is if their quarterbacks can get them the football down the field.
Well, Michigan State has a tradition of great wide receiver play, as we've talked about on the show, and it goes back to George Perlis. And I want to make one note about George Perlis because he passed this year. George Perlis, when Penn State first got in the Big Ten, a lot of teams didn't want us in there. George Perlis called Joe Paterno immediately and said, let's end the season each year against each other, and let's create a rivalry that can really end our season every year. And to his credit, that's been the case. And there's been some great games. So let's talk about those wide receivers that we mentioned. When you talk about Michigan State, they've got excellent speed. This is against Northwestern, one of the best defenses in our conference. And even though this corner is 12 yards off, Michigan State's receiver is going to get behind him, and that puts a lot of pressure on your safeties. And once those safeties start to come back, now all of a sudden the run game starts to open up. But take a look at how fast, when we look at the video, look how fast that this receiver from Michigan State eats up that cushion of Northwestern defender, and not only eats up the cushion, gets past him, gets behind him by a couple yards, and the ball's there. So if the ball's there, that's going to be a problem for Penn State, and it'll be a real test for the secondary. The next thing that we'll talk about is the running game. Now, the running game has not been what Michigan State is used to. They don't have that one great running back. They've got a couple of guys. Hayward is another guy. It's a power runner. But they've tried to get the running game going. And because the receivers can put pressure on the safeties, they've got to play back. And once you get them back, now they can get the numbers in their advantage and run the football. And you'll see here against Northwestern, again, a really good defensive football team. Take a look at the video, how they get some movement up front, they get double teams, and they have even numbers, and they're able to get the ball and get themselves 14, 15-yard gains. You're not going to see the 70-yard runs, those kind of things, but you'll see those. Now, to get creative in the run game, they involve their quarterbacks in the run game. Now, Lombardi and Thorne are both going to be, whoever plays, they're going to have to get involved in the run game. When you look at the guy in the triangle down there, the quarterback is going to read him. If he closes, he's going to keep the ball and run it. If the defensive end goes up the field to take the quarterback, they'll hand it off, and that gives them numbers to work with if you have an offensive line that's not doing a great job. So take a look at this one here. on the video. He reads that end. The end closes. He keeps it, gets himself 7, 8 yards, 9 yards, moves the chains. Those are the kind of things Michigan State may have to do to get what they want to get done against Penn State offensively. Now, once you start to play the run game, if they have some success, now your safeties start coming down. You get some play action pass, and they're very, very good with play action pass scheme-wise, but they have not been as consistent getting the ball to the receivers in stride. Here you're going to motion a receiver across. They're going to fake the run over to the left, get the safety to fill, and get the receiver in red behind them. And we talk about not getting it to them in places where they can make plays. Here's an example. Take a look at the video here. Motion across, get Northwestern to make the adjustment. They make the fake. The safety is down. They've got him there. If the quarterback puts that ball to him in stride, that's a touchdown for Michigan State. But again, turns into a 20-yard gain rather than that.
And taking a look at the defensive side of the ball for Michigan State, I think this is where Penn State can really do some damage this weekend against the Spartan defense, because if Michigan State can't get their offense going, Penn State can score points, and that could be the key to the game.
No question about it, Kenny. And when you look at Michigan State's defense this year as opposed to the defenses of the past that Penn State has played, they're not quite as deep across the board. They don't have the set of great linebackers that they've had. They've got Simmons in the middle, who's as good as any linebacker Penn State will play this year. And across the board in the secondary, they're not as deep. And this is a defense that's set up to get their linebackers and secondary involved because they're going to be wide ends, be aggressive. They're good up front. They have a good up front group of guys that are going to give you some problems. So take a look here at the short yardage. You're going to see that Simmons is the guy in the middle. They're going to force everything back into him. And not only does he get into the backfield, but he makes a tackle. Take a look at this 4th and 1 against Northwestern. They force everything back inside. He gets in the backfield, makes the play. They turn the ball over on downs. Big play in that game. Now, Mel Tucker, since he's been at Ohio State as a secondary coach his entire career, he's been everything has come off of a 2-safety high. Now, to kind of get some things and force some things to happen, they start to blitz off the edge. They rotate the secondary, get into 3 deep with 3 underneath, and Penn State's got to take advantage of that. Take a look at how they do that against Northwestern on the video. Right before the snap, they come down. They confuse Northwestern's quarterback. He doesn't get the ball out on time like he'd like to. The other thing that you'll see is they're going to move their front guys. They're going to tie in their safety with the up front, gap integrity, force cutbacks to their safeties, and their safeties are fairly effective making tackles. Take a look at this one against Northwestern. Again, you'll see up front, they force the Northwestern tailback to cut back and be moving laterally rather than north and south, and there's the safety to make the play. The last element I want to talk about is you cannot be late on throws because they're good in the secondary at coming up with some turnovers, and they do get some pressure with their down guys. So take a look at this play here. Northwestern going to drop back. Michigan State uses a 3-man rush and is able to get them out of the pocket and keep them from converting on a 3rd down.
Jay, as always, thank you for breaking it down for us. We wrap up the Blue-White Tailgate when we come back.
All right, final segment of the show. Great to have you with us. Penn State has 4 core values. They have it posted up. One of them is sacrifice, and quarterback Sean Clifford says they've done plenty of that this year. Being able to see my family, not being able to hang out with my girlfriend. It's at one point I was living on my own. So it's the little things like that people just don't see. They might think that we're just kind of going about our day like everything's normal, but really, there's been really nothing normal about it. They get a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's absolutely nothing normal about 2020, and they've been doing all the right things off the field so that they can continue to play football games on the field, guys. I mean, look, 7 games in 7 weeks. We've said there's nothing guaranteed about each week. Go ahead, the obligatory knock on wood that it continues. So, yeah, they do deserve some credit. It's quite an accomplishment, actually.
By the way, lost in all this, a lot of people don't realize next week's finals week as well. All right, time now for the good, the bad, and the ugly. So my good deals with Coastal Carolina BYU. They got together late. May not have been the game of the century, the game of the year, but it was the game of the week, and it was a pretty good game despite some chippiness.
Yeah, BYU, anytime, anywhere, any place. They made it all the way to Conway, South Carolina. The bad is the defending national champs from LSU. Woo! 2020's been rough for the Tigers. 30-point-plus underdogs, I believe, against Alabama, and still lost by 30-point-plus points. It is not looking good. They can't wait for this season to get over.
And I got the ugly. And the ugly, to me, is also the Coastal Carolina BYU game. And it's symptomatic of what's going on across college football. The officials are letting a lot more taunting go on. There's a lot more talking between plays. There's a lot more excessive celebration sideline. I think college football has got to get a handle on that. The other part that we'll talk about a little bit is also the Ohio State-Michigan game getting canceled. And I think that's unfortunate as well, and we'll talk about that.
In fact, let's stick with excessive celebration for a moment. Here are the results of our picks so far this season. Captain Victory Lap there at the top, Kenny Schierlinger. Now, we're not going to do picks, and the reason we're not going to do picks right now because there have been too often cancellations along the way. Take Ohio State, Illinois, canceled on Friday night before the game. So that's why we're not going to do picks, just to keep it safe. But the vast majority of the games have been played.
Yeah, and a lot of credit that they've gotten these many games in. But, Jay, I'm going to take, what you were saying about Ohio State and Michigan. I work for a Fox network, and that is the game, not just labeled the game, but it's the game for college football networks and college football on television. You get to pick in priority which games you want between Fox and ABC at the beginning. Number one on the list is the game, Ohio State, Michigan. And it hurts not to have that for a network and obviously for college football fans, too.
It hurts Todd's bottom line, too, since he's working for Fox, because that game, $234,000 per ad, $17 million in ad revenue for Fox Network for that game. So, Todd, that Christmas bonus may be a little less. You might get the Jelly of the Month Club.
That's right, a little less commission. But I do want to mention the Army-Navy game, and what an awesome game this is to have for the weekend. And the uniforms are just out of this world again for Navy, celebrating the 175th anniversary of the Academy with marble stone pattern on the jersey. And for Army, the 25th Infantry Division, Tropic Lightning. So it's good stuff.
And at Mikey Stadium, no less.
Yeah.
How about that? What a setting. All right, so let's get to our keys to the game, brought to you by our great friends at Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships. So I get to go first in the keys to the game, and I'll start with this. The obvious one is the giveaway takeaway thing. Both teams come in -9 into this game, and we know that Penn State's given up 58 points off of its losses on turnovers this year, so that's hard. And the running game for Penn State, if they continue to keep running the ball, it's the threat of it that makes such a difference.
Well, my key, Steve, is going to come down to a couple things. Number one, I want to see the offensive football team for Penn State play a full 60-minute game. They have had good halves against Nebraska and against Ohio State and against some other teams, and a good half against Rutgers and a really good half against Michigan to get out in front. But when you look at the second half, they have not really played that full 60-minute game yet. And I think the other thing that's going to be key for this team is they like to play from ahead more so than from behind. And I think it's going to be important for Penn State's, both offensively and defensively, to get out in front of Michigan State and really kind of put them in a hole they can't get out of.
I understand conditions dictated it at Rutgers, but I'd like to see the trust come back for the quarterbacks to be able to take a shot downfield a little bit, loosen up the defense so that they can run the ball a little bit more effectively. We'll see if that's necessary against Michigan State or not. And Steve, -9 for both teams. To say Michigan State has played this poorly with that good of a turnover ratio is really quite shocking.
Yeah, exactly. And there's another point. Jay made a great point about playing with the lead. Penn State has played the last 8 quarters with the lead. Notice what the results happen to be. I mean, it's mentally, it just means so much when you're not the team playing uphill. Well, for Jay, Todd, Kenny, I'm Steve. Thanks so much for joining us on the Blue White Tailgate presented by Blaze Alexander Family Dealerships.